And that's, yeah, and that's where they're going to be at. So that's what we'll be doing, taking care of that. And then once we get everything settled and all that, we'll submit it to the town manager and go from there. And then, of course, you guys will eventually get that too. Let's see, I think the next is the in-car cams. You guys want to know more about that? Okay, we have 2 currently installed and 2 working vehicles right now. And they are being used. They actually are great tools when it comes to traffic control. And so and as soon as we get the other cars operational and Chief gets back from vacation, we'll get the other 2 cars installed. So, yeah. Mine needs one and Officer Hender's need one still. Let's see, and I believe Crown Vic is next.
All cars have cameras except for 2. Is that correct, or?
Okay. 2 of the patrol vehicles do. The school resource officer car will not have one in it.
Right, yeah.
So 2 of the working patrol vehicles right now do. It'll be Officer Vassal's and Officer Berger's vehicles have the in-car cams at this time. Mine and Officer Heener's will be installed later.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe the next one would be the SRO car.
Yep, let him know about,
Okay.
right, the,
So right now, the school resource officer patrol vehicle is down. It has some steering mechanism issues, and we'll be taking that down to get it repaired. We don't know what the cost of it is going to be yet, but we're pretty sure it's probably going to be the whole steering mechanism needs to be replaced. And on those vehicles, they have what's called electronic steering mechanisms. It's not like it used to be, you have a pump and all that. This is all electronic. So when those go down, you have to replace the whole system on them. And I don't know what the costs are on them, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be cheap either. And at this time, the school resource officer is using the chief's car until we get that repaired. Then after we get that repaired, we'll go from there and see what we're going to do with the Crown Vic. The Crown Vic is going to need some work on it eventually to itself. There is a cylinder that's misfiring somewhere in the vehicle. We can't figure out what's happening, and it's losing coolant. But we'll take care of that as we go.
Okay, so just to confirm, which vehicle is the SRO vehicle?
That would be the 2000, what is it?
it's an Explorer.
Yeah, it's a Ford Explorer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the one with the steering mechanism issue that will be repaired.
Yeah, will be
and you're still
repaired.
waiting on the cost for that.
Yes, we're still waiting on the estimate cost on that one. We're not sure what it's going to be yet.
Okay, and then the 2007 Crown Vic is the one that's having, was it a transmission issue?
No, it's a 2011 Crown Vic,
2011 Crown
and
Vic.
it has a piston issue in the engine.
Gotcha, okay.
The Crown Vic's 2000. No, it's 2011 Crown Vic. No.
Okay, so my understanding, at least from the last time we talked with Neil about that, the Crown Vic was one, given the age and the type of damage, you weren't sure if that was going to be a replacement, like if the vehicle would need to be replaced or if that was something you can repair. So is that?
That's still at this time that.
Okay.
We're still looking at that too. We're checking all the options right now with that one. We're not sure if at this time we can't replace it at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Training, I believe, is next.
Yep, officer training with.
Okay. So, come this summer, we're going to start doing more officer training. So we'll be doing firearms, driving, and defensive tactics. Now, I'm the current defensive tactics instructor, which I have to check our budget on that, and I'll get back with you guys later on that. But what it is, I have to order books for PPCT, and that's our new defensive tactics that we do. And I have to order the books. Once I order the books, then we can start getting everybody fitted to do the PPCT and get that out of the way. That will take probably a majority of 3 to 4 months to complete because I only can do block 4 hours at a time. But we'll get that completed, so that'll be the next one.
Question on that, defensive tactics, is that actually physical tactics, or is it driving tactics, or combination of both, or?
Okay, defensive tactics is it's hands-on for handcuffing, defending yourself from assaults and stuff like that. Also, if you need to, somebody who's too aggressive, to show them how to take them to the ground and restrain them without doing any harm to them or any injuries.
Or breaking an arm or something, yes.
So
Yeah.
that's what PPCT stands for, is Pressure Point Control Tactics.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Great,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
good,
So,
good, I think that's very important.
and now that with the new system they have now, there's a lot more to it. It's similar to the FBI defensive tactics. So, we'll be teaching, like I said, I'll be teaching that here soon. And we will be sending another officer to the FBI defensive tactics too, so we have more people trained on that, so we can have a broader if we need to. So we'll be doing that. I believe, as of right now, we don't have any other training that, of my knowledge right now, that we'll be sending anybody else to at this point, other than that, what I just explained.
And for the quarterly reporting that you spoke with the chief on, he said he planned to have first quarter in the board packet for the first meeting in June.
Thank you. That works.
Oh, yeah. And as of right now, May 15th will be the last day that we'll be working in Hotchkiss or assisting them in anything. Until we hear otherwise, May 15th will be the last day that we were there. I myself will not be working it no more, taking over the responsibilities for the chief.
So just for clarification, while Chief Ferguson is out, is your title acting chief or what?
Just sergeant,
Okay,
the sergeant.
all right,
That's it.
thanks. All right, I think you pretty much covered it from my perspective. I don't have any other questions. Mick, do you have any questions? Okay, any questions from the public or regarding public safety? He's out on PTO. On PTO. Mm-hmm.
No, okay.
So we did have one other follow-up topic on public safety, just for our own discussion, on ideas for animal registration and how we can possibly get more people registered. So I just wanted to check in.
For handgun registration?
No, animal
Oh,
animal registration, dogs. Better ways to get people participating in that program. So the only real idea I had would be to see if we would have the capacity to set up a booth at the farmers market that's happening this summer. If the town could have a booth, or if someone from public safety could run a booth for that and offer registration on site.
That's not a bad idea. I know that Neil had stated that he was in favor of the conversation we'd had about doing the extended licensing instead of doing a yearly license, and that he did want to hold, he was calling them like Register Your Dog Day events, things like that. He'd even talked about, maybe doing it as more of a, some kind of a, maybe come get a hot dog, meet your officers, register your dog kind of day at Town Park or something like that too. I think having a booth at the farmers market or even a booth at Cherry Days, things like that where people will be there. I know a lot of the time the shelter comes and brings some dogs, so maybe we could find out if they're gonna be there at Cherry Days this year too, and maybe coordinate and be
Kind
near
of team up
where
with
they'll
them.
have the animals. So if people are adopting animals, they could also register them at the same time.
Right, yeah, great
Yeah.
ideas.
Suzanne?
It's kind of funny to use the podium with
I didn't know
informal
where else to
committee.
put the microphone.
As long as we're talking about giveaways, if you're talking about hot dogs, why not, and this is something I had mentioned in the past, why not offer, which you can get for very cheap, those little doggy bag hangers that you put on dog collars, and maybe it would have Town of Peonia printed on it, just as like a, so maybe instead of giving away hot dogs, you give away something that's conducive to good animal control. And as far as the rabies, and so, I mean, of course you'd want the cost of those only cost a few cents if you get a bulk quantity. And you'd recover the cost of that in the dog tag license, so it's not free, but it's free. And then as far as the extended licensing, I'd like you to consider one of the reasons why you get dog licenses is to ascertain that the animal has its current vaccinations. So you want to look at what the rabies requirement, what the state requirements for vaccinations are before you let people off the hook and give them too long of an extension before a license renewal, because it's for checking if the dogs are vaccinated. Thanks.
That is true, and after 1 year, it's 3 years right now. So, but we would want to make sure that they don't change that. So right now, a dog has to have a rabies shot twice during the first year, and then after that, when they're not considered a puppy any longer, which is after 1 year, I believe it's every third year you come back in for a rabies, but we'd want to confirm that.
Yeah,
And I do like the idea of swag. I've tried to write that in the budget a couple of times, so that we can have something that.
just a little something. It doesn't matter what it is,
Yeah.
but yeah, it definitely helps draw people in.
And people do like those little doggy bag that you can put on your leash and things. We got 15 came when we ordered doggy pot bags for our locations that we have in the parks, and we put those out, and they were gone in a day.
All right, I think those are great ideas. So our next step on that, I can look into the rabies shot, confirm the time frame on that so that we can be certain we're following that. And then, Corinne, if you could look into probably the cost for possible giveaways and what staff capacity would be or availability would be to participate in one or multiple events this summer.
Okay.
And I think that pretty much covers it.
I'd be willing to work at one of the tables as well.
Okay, great.
So, sure.
Great.
All right, so if there are no more comments specifically to dog tags, I think we can move on to the food truck ordinance. Just a quick review on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. So where we're at now is that the ordinance is ready to go back to the board. It has been tabled, I believe, to the May 11th regular meeting, potentially the following.
Yeah.
I know that we've got a lot
You have
on
a
our
pretty heavy
coming
agenda
up.
for the 25th. We have our meeting today, or I'm sorry, for the 11th. 25th is the next one in May. And so the agenda review meeting is this afternoon, and at that time it would be finalized, but it is pretty lengthy.
Okay, so probably safe to say sometime in May, not
Yeah.
necessarily the next
Mhm.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other action item I had on that was to make sure that we're notifying the people who attended the listening session that this is coming back to the board. I know it's a little tricky when we don't know exactly when it's going to hit the agenda, but if
Right.
have you already notified them that we are going to be reviewing it?
No,
or-
I'm waiting
okay.
for the mayor to affirm that it will be on the agenda. So I'll ask her about that today. If not this one, then we will, we'll just make sure that it's on for the 25th so that they can be notified.
Okay, great. Is there anything else we need to discuss related to that I feel like that's pretty much off our plate at this time, just back to the board.
Yeah, I agree.
Suzanne?
About the food truck licensing, I don't know if you've considered this option, but perhaps it's a use that could be allowed by special review in the zoning code. So in that chart of what's allowed by right and what's special review, food carts on private property might be a special review. That way, it would give restaurant owners a chance to be heard. If a hamburger joint had a problem with a hamburger food cart that was going to be going in right next to it, they would have an ability to approach the board in the special review process. And so it would be more tailored to specific instances in this town that way. I just was wondering if you might consider that. People might feel like they have more of an opportunity to weigh in on this rather than having kind of a more generic ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the suggestion. At this point, since the draft ordinance has already gone to the Planning Commission and now is coming before the board, I would recommend if you could provide that comment either when it's before the board or in writing to the board. I don't think at this point we could make an additional change without having to go back to the Planning Commission on that.
It is a good idea, though. I actually think that special review is underutilized because it is really for those items. It's not that it's permitted and it's not that it's prohibited. It really needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yes, I just want to make sure that we're not extending the process back to Planning Commission again, but I do think that's a consideration that the board should review. Thank you. Okay, and then on the ADU ordinance, I think we're in a similar situation. Actually, I think I'm getting those mixed up. Did the food truck ordinance even go to the Planning Commission? No, I'm getting that mixed up. I'm sorry. So, so if we wanted to take an additional recommendation to the board regarding food trucks, that's something that we could consider before it goes back at the second May meeting. Okay.
yeah, because I think that see, and I start to get them mixed up too between our short-term rental, our ADU, and our food truck. Because the food truck is, no, that one is in an ordinance form. It's the short-term rentals that's not in an ordinance form. So, yeah, you could make that, or have that conversation with the board as well and see if that would be something they would want to include.
Okay. So then is that something that we want to add to our recommendations to the board before this comes back, that potentially this should be considered a special review use?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Corinne, I'll get you an updated version of our recommendation document that includes special review as a way to review food trucks, and we'll get that before the board at that meeting.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's hard to keep all these track of all these. 'Cause they're, yeah.
Okay, so now ADU ordinance, and this one did go to the Planning Commission. That happened on April 30th,
Yes,
and is scheduled to come back before the board also in May,
on May 11th.
May 11th.
Right now, it is on the agenda. She may move it, but right now it is tentatively on.
Okay. So again, I've only have one action item related to this, and this was to make sure that we get a legal opinion, or at least request a legal opinion from Attorney Nerlin on specifically water use and how we're going to handle properties that may be out of compliance with codes. So in a real way, it's not a change of use, but in terms of our code, it might be considered a change of use, and we want to make sure we're really clear about how we're handling that.
Yes, and I have requested an official legal opinion on that from him. And when I spoke to him right before this meeting, he wanted me to be assured that he was working on that and would have follow-up on that.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to discuss related to that? No?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Any questions about where we're at with that from the public? Sorry, that just, it's amusing to me. Yep, okay.
Mhm.
Then we'll move on to short-term rental survey. So, the survey's complete. We have 216 responses, and we have a draft summary to bring to the board. Again, maybe at the next meeting, or maybe at the second meeting in May. Is that?
So we could do this a couple of ways. We could put this in the packet and supply it to them with just, as just here is the information, and they can start reviewing it and then have it as an agenda item at a following meeting. So that way they have time to look at it and really disseminate it before the conversation starts. Or we can hold it and provide it in the packet with it as an agenda item at the following meeting.
I think it's a lot to absorb. I would
Mhm.
be in favor of having
Right.
it in the packet if we can do that, and saying we're not going to discuss this tonight. We want you to have the information.
Right.
Take 2 weeks and get your thoughts together, and we'll discuss it at the following meeting.
So
Yeah.
what we would do with that is similar to the way we did the mobile food. We'll put it under your committee report as just, that you're, when you give your committee report, you're providing the information, and it will be on the agenda at a future date.
Yep, I agree with that, and
Okay.
even though the survey, I think it's very concise, very easy to read, but there is just a lot of stuff to absorb in it, so, yeah, I think that's a great way to handle that. But I would suggest in regards to what type of regulation would you support for STRs in Paonia, on the titles,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think if we could get rid of requirement on the side of it and just put, to notify neighbor, or it would give more of a description. Because when I printed it out anyways, it
It's-
didn't
yeah.
say everything. It just had requirement to register what,
Right.
requirement to meet CO.
So,
I was to say, I did print it off of the attachments when the agenda was sent, and it did print out the full.
so you're looking at 2 separate documents.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
So,
Mick,
yeah,
what you're
this
looking at
other
is
one
the,
it did print it out
right.
very well.
So-
Yeah, this one did.
So
Right.
the first one that you're looking at, Mick, that's just the statistics that Google
Recap.
provides based on the survey,
Okay.
and there's no way to edit that.
Yep.
So my recommendation is that we can make it available just to make it possible for people to confirm that our summary matches what Google provided for the survey. But I think our summary is going to be the more useful document for the board.
Yeah, this is and that does explain it all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, yeah, I'm good with that then.
So we've got a couple of options. I do think the draft GAPS committee summary, it pulls in the same charts for the most part, but where just like you said, where there's text that got cut off, or the information I felt wasn't presented all that well, I just adjusted the way it was presented without changing any of the actual data.
Yeah.
Another option that we can do is take, so since their survey was done on Google Forms, they have an option where you can publish the results online, and then that could be linked from the town website.
And that was what I was going to ask. When I looked at it online, I didn't play around or look at it close enough to see if there was an ability to provide a link, so people could compare the Google data with the GAPS data, if they chose to do so.
I think that would be good.
Okay.
Anyone had any problem, they can go and
Yeah.
compile it themselves and see that we're
Yeah.
right on.
So anyone could go and do their own analysis
Yes.
if we do that. So I just wanted to confirm with the committee that we're in agreement on that before I hit that publish button and make it available online.
I'm in agreement.
All right, so I will set it to published public, and I will send a link, Corinne, so that you can post that.
I can do that, yeah.
Okay.
So what we did where we had the the survey was we just put, the results coming soon. So from there, then we can provide both the survey, the GAPS results and the link to the Google results. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Okay, and then we do also have the document, basically a printout version of every survey, every individual's response.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for record keeping. I think at over 800 pages, that's not something we should include in the packet. So I don't know the best way to inform the board or the public that that document is available should anyone want to review not just the aggregate, but actual individual responses.
You can report that out, and of course, we'll have them. Like I said, we'll just, because that is electronic, we're not going to print that either, unless we received a request to print it, which I highly doubt we would because it's 25 cents a page. But it can be reviewed electronically in the office. So we would have it available if someone wanted to look.
Okay, that works for me. So then we'll just report at the next board meeting that those results, should anyone wish to review the individual responses, that can be reviewed electronically in the office or printed at cost. But
right.
Yeah. Sure.
So I really appreciate that you're doing this survey and the way that you've undertaken it. The one question I have is, in a way, we haven't come up with a definition of what a short-term rental really is. I guess that might be part of what you're getting out of the survey. What one person defines it, who buys a house, might be completely different from what another person who's renting a room sporadically might define it as. So what really is the definition of short-term rental? And when people were answering that, I think people might have had different concepts in their mind. So I think it's really valuable as a tool, but there are some issues around short-term rentals that you have to consider too when you come up with the definition. Thanks.
Yeah, if I could respond to that. So on the survey itself, at the very top of the survey, there was a definition provided of short-term rentals for people to use as a guide when they were completing the survey. So that definition the Governmental Affairs and Public Safety Committee defined short-term rentals for the purpose of the survey as the rental of a non-commercial dwelling unit, accessory dwelling unit, or any portion of a dwelling unit to any persons for less than 30 days. So that is the definition that was provided on the survey. Whether the board wants to take up that definition, if they set any regulations or change that definition, that'll be a board decision.
Right, yeah, and we also discussed that in the Let's Talk. And I'm not sure if that was the same as we had on the survey, but I think it was very close. So, yeah. Sure.
So I guess what I'm thinking of with that is I understand that definition, but I mean, what's considered a business? And I think that was in the survey too. I think I wrote a comment. But I mean, if someone has a short-term rental for 2 months during the summer, is that the same thing as someone who does it as a business all year long? And so there are like degrees of short-term rental as well. And I'm sure this will all be considered when there's a greater discussion by the board.
Thank you. So in terms of the short-term rental summary that we submit to the board, I wanted to go over that and the committee comments that are drafted on there and just make sure that we're in agreement on those, see if you have any changes to those comments.
Yeah.
They're pretty much based on all the conversations we had previously about
Exactly.
this. But I want to make sure that it's an accurate reflection of the committee's position on each of those. And if there's anything else we want to include or not include or table for a later time. And one thing I'm thinking of there is, so I included a comment about long-term rental incentives on that question. And I think that might be going out of scope a little bit, and maybe we should just talk to the board about whether that's something they want us to take up for, for later consideration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tried to find information on incentives for short-term rentals, and it was mainly in tax codes. So if you rented it out for less than 14 days per year, then you had nothing to pay. But over 14 days, then they start hitting you up. So, but just a couple comments about, the overview was, I really like, the pie charts, the responses for each question. That's put in here. Our committee comments, yeah, I think they're all just right on, and yeah, I think it's very, very good.
Okay.
That's why I had to say that in the meeting yesterday about wait until you see this report.
Okay. All right. So what we can do is, this will be the main document that's included in the packet then for the board.
Yes.
This summary review, and with the understanding that the board will have, and the public will have some time to review it, and it will actually come back as a agenda item for discussion, probably at the following meeting.
Right.
Okay.
So would you like to write something up for that, or do you just want me to put that on the agenda summary form for with the gaps under that committee report, or do you want to write something up, just a blurb or a brief summary statement that I can put attached prior, on top?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll do a summary statement. I'll make sure that you have a chance to review that, and then we'll add that to the packet.
Perfect.
Great, thanks.
So I think that takes care of where we're at on the survey, unless we want to offer specific recommendations to the board based on the results. At this point, I'm not comfortable doing that because of my business conflict of interest with short-term rentals. I would rather present the data and then make it available for board discussion. But Mick, if you had any specific recommendations you wanted to make, we could call those committee recommendations with me recused from that. So I don't know how you feel about that.
I feel great with the way that this is being presented with just our comments.
Okay.
So I think we present this, we hear from the board, and then discuss it accordingly.
Well, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and so I know from previous, of course, in other conversations with the town attorney, that he always states that conflict of interest really resides within yourself. Unless it's a clear financial conflict, and I know running the business, but I'm curious though if it really falls in the same classification as a short-term rental when it is. I was curious, and maybe when you were looking, you had looked, because I haven't. Does the Bros or other people use VRBO or Airbnb as a mode of advertising their business? Because while as a more of a hostile model, it's a little different, it really isn't that much different than the Bros, where there's shared facilities and you're renting a room for a short period of time. And I'm kind of curious of whether or not your business model, your personal business model, actually would fall under that same definition.
So by the definition, we would not, because we are a commercial facility, not a residential property.
Right.
So as far as existing regulations, taxes, all of that, our business is commercial. So we are in the same category as Bros or as the Rocky Mountain Inn, versus someone who's renting a residential property. At the same time, any lodging business in town is competing with short-term rentals that are available in town. And because of that, I do think that creates a financial conflict of interest for me. And even though I feel like I could approach this from an unbiased position, I don't feel that would be appropriate because of the financial conflict.
It's a good point.
So
Yeah.
we'll present the data, which is just the data.
Yeah.
And
Just
then the
the
board
facts,
can take that and have a discussion, and I'll recuse myself from that, and I won't participate in any vote on this topic. So I think we've taken it as a committee about as far as we can take it, and we're ready to move to the board.
I actually have one other comment, and maybe this would be better served when we're discussing it, but I'm thinking in regards to city services that, you know, they're going to be charged possibly commercial rates. And I don't know if that's fair, if they can only rent their property out for, you know, less than, what, 180 days a year, is it? Or it's,
We don't have any
yeah, we
current
don't have,
restrictions on that. So that'll be, I think
But-
that's a good point and should be part of the board consideration is,
Right.
Are we considering a property commercial year round if they're only renting 2 months out of the year?
right, right. So I don't know if, how hard it would be to come up with like a in-between rate or something, or I know that would probably really tax you to come up with different billings, but it's
Well-
just, I'm just kind of throwing that out there.
Well, and I think a good place to start that conversation at the board level too would be at what point, so we're talking about that, so you're using the 2 month as the reference point. At what point is it a business that's a home-based business that you're running from your home? And at what point then does it become commercial? You know, if
Right.
you're doing it every month, month after month, and it's a second place you own and nobody ever, you're not staying in there and then you letting it be used as a short term while you're at another location. It's not that kind of a situation. Is that commercial? Would you consider that commercial use when that's all you're doing is rent, you know, but is renting it out once a month and only receiving that 1 month payment any different than owning it and renting it to one family for the year? So it really does become, I think that's a big conversation, because our code
Right,
does say
right.
that a home-based business wouldn't be charged a commercial. So that's in residential. If you have a business you're
Right.
running from your home, like a sewing business or a
Yeah,
human resources business, you're not being charged a commercial rate
yes.
for that location. So that is, I think that might be what's existing in the code, a good place to start that conversation.
Okay, thanks.
So one thing we could do, and in the intro to the data for the next board meeting, when we're just putting it out there for consideration, we could add a couple of points as maybe a discussion guide or like things that we think the board needs to consider.
Sure.
And I know, Corinne, you did something similar for the subdivision review, put
Yeah.
out here are the topics for board decision-making or consideration, and I
Right.
thought that was helpful. So let me see what I can put together based on the discussions we've had around this. I can
See
think
the wheels turning.
I can think of a few topics that definitely need to be included in that discussion. Home-based business versus commercial. When do we decide when that something is commercial? How does our current code apply, or how should it apply? What can we actually enforce? Questions like that we've
Yeah.
talked about at these meetings. So
Great.
I'll try to add that in my summary and send that to you, Mick, to see if there's anything else you can think of or anything that
Good.
should be changed on that.
Thanks.
I think it always helps, especially when you're starting to review a lot of data and then having to start making decisions on it with no point of reference. Sometimes having a place to start the conversation gets the wheels turning, and then it progresses organically. And you have so much time to do it. I just need it by, you know, mid-afternoon on Friday to have it in the packet.
Yep.
All right, so anything else we want to talk about with the short-term rental survey at this point?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good.
Do we have any new business that we need to discuss today?
I do.
Okay.
And I sent out just minutes before the meeting an email with a couple of pictures. And they're of the gutter along 3rd Avenue near Colorado.
I
And
don't-
there's a guard on top of part of the gutter that it looks like a truck probably ran over, and some of those guards are just sticking up, and the property owner on that corner is just thinking that it's a safety issue, and what can we do? Can we just remove them, or?
Is it a ditch opening,
it's-
or is it the storm sewer?
It's a storm sewer.
Okay, so
It's a
I don't
storm sewer.
see the email, I'm not sure,
Oh, okay.
but if you can send it to me, I'll get it to Public Works. Because we've had that happen, we have it happen a lot, with the one between the bank and the post office on
Yeah.
the sidewalk, because vehicles drive over it through,
Right.
and they start to bend and lift, and they become a tripping or a hazard, and so,
Yeah.
they can, pop them and fix them and put them
And
back.
he sees kids on bicycles, of course, riding over them, and
Yeah.
and he's just waiting for something to happen, and so yeah, I think, and I said, well, also there's at the end of
Oh.
May.
My
we-
name's spelled wrong, that's why I didn't get it.
What did I do?
You put 2 R's and there's 2 N's. That's why I didn't get it.
Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah, okay.
Thank you for forwarding it.
But yeah, that could even be put on the side for the trash pickup, or for the big item pickup at the end of the month, if that would be easier.
I'll definitely have them take a look at it. So I'm looking at the image here, and so there's another section that's like this that doesn't have the grate cover on it. And a year or 2 ago, we had an individual whose dog actually got stuck in it and passed away.
Oh,
Because they were a larger dog, and they got caught in it and overnight, and they had
Oh,
gotten out,
wow.
and yeah, so if we're able at all, I'd like to keep the cover for safety, but I'll definitely have them take a look. I'm looking at one of these pictures, and they may not be able to repair some sections of this,
Right.
but I'll definitely get them out there to take care of that.
and then there's another picture there that shows a corner
Mm-hmm,
at Ornega,
mm-hmm,
and there's some debris there, and there's a handicapped person that lives on Oak Street, and she likes running her powered wheelchair, but she has to run it in the street because some of the intersections where the sidewalks and the street come, they're not cleaned,
mm-hmm.
so her tires get dirty, and when she goes into a shop, she's asked to, leave, or,
Okay.
yeah, so,
Is this second or third in Anarga?
that's third.
Thank you.
And really, that was the only intersection when I walked home yesterday that I saw it was bad. I'm sure there are some other ones, but anyway, she was just concerned with that.
Yeah. So I'll follow up with them on that as well. I know they've started running the street sweeper, but the large street sweeper, that's the reason we ordered the attachment for the skid steer, because the skid steer attachment, which still has not been delivered, can get in the tighter spaces and actually get into the gutters, and the large sweeper doesn't. It really, it wets and clears, but it really is just pushing to the side. It's
Well-
not cleaning.
And that was her comment too. She said, yeah, the street cleaner can go through it, but it just kind of piles it up right
Right.
where I try to go through, so.
Right, it helps the line of traffic for vehicle travel and cyclists, but it's not helping at the corners. And so,
Yeah.
I know that Public Works has made a concerted effort over the last couple of years when we've been doing sidewalk work to really take care of those, the accesses on the corners. We've put in a lot that there weren't any, but I'll make sure that they get back out there and make sure that they're, I know they're time restraints, so they can't clear the side of every street for the entire length. But I will make sure that they remember just to have a priority that they check the accessibility accesses to make sure that those areas are getting
Yeah,
routinely cleaned up.
that'd be great, thank you.
Okay, Mick, thanks for bringing up that safety issue, and it sounds like we've got a resolution through staff action, and is there anything else we need to take on with that?
No,
Great. Any other new business?
no, not for me.
Anything else from your perspective that we need to have on our
I
Radar?
don't think so. I'm happy that we're moving things along. It feels good when you start checking things off and they get accomplished, so,
Yes.
yeah. And I can't say enough, thank you, because the amount of effort you guys put into this is impressive, yes.
Yes, she is.
We really enjoy reviewing all of your hard work, Michelle.
Mhm.
Well, at least with with everything, but with the short-term rental survey in particular, I feel like it's been such a great effort with input from the public, from the board, from the committee. It made it a much better process than it possibly would have been otherwise. So I think I've just been really encouraged by how that all happened.
Good.
Okay, so then I think with that, we can go ahead and close the meeting if nobody has anything else. Okay. Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thanks.